Okay, as my first video, I want to introduce, I just figured it'd be easiest to do that first. My name is Nicholas Craig. This is NAC Academics with 2 Ks. NAC, a special skill or talent. We are located in West Vancouver. And this is a formula sheet. And remember, I'm going to do an intro before, but this is a formula sheet that I made up myself. The button is how to be a nerd, and in a second I'm going to go over how to be more of a nerd. But outside of that, this is my formula sheet. You do not get this formula sheet on the test. For example, I'm going to highlight in red a trigonometric section that you get most of, if not all, or some, or parts of formulas on a test. Probably not these ones off to the top right-hand corner. But all the rest of them are usually on the formula sheet. Oh, not these either. But most of the rest of them on the inside there are part of the formula sheet. But I have decided to make my own formula sheet with every single formula that you're going to use for each chapter. So we have transformations, top left, and the transformations formula. And in chapter 1, we're going to go over what all those different letters do. Off to the right, let's throw a box around it. Chapter 2, radicals. My books are going to go along the public school system's textbook until they sue me and take down my website or something. But until then, I'll continue. Polynomials has a bunch of stuff. The regular form of polynomial, different ways we can write things, and the factor and the remainder theorem off to the right. And chapter 4, 5, and 6 is the trigonometry section in the middle. And then chapter 7 is the exponential formulas down below. And chapter 8 is the logarithm formulas down below. And chapter 9 is rational functions down below. And combinatorics is chapter 11. Oh, I don't have a section on chapter 10. All good. There's a review sheet on chapter 10. So a little bit about the way the website works. So we're going to have notes, homework, and video. Now the video goes over the notes, just like I have here, working through whichever I have. Print off the notes, print off the homework, print off all of it. Print off the whole textbook at the same time if you like. Bind it up, put it in a binder, do whatever you want. Put a staple on it. Hopefully use double-sided to save the environment. But either way, print the notes so at least when you're on mobile you can have the notes open, and then print the homework and try and do the homework, or try and do your in-class homework, or try and do your in-class homework and look for similar notes and then watch those videos, or whichever. So that's the intro on the video, a little bit of intro on me and the company. Now we're going to get into a little bit more on how to be a math nerd. So boot camp. What I like to do is I like to break my to-dos into separate things. I like to break my to-dos into things that I do that just happen once, that I write down, either erase or delete off a file or whichever, and that's in like a top section. But down below is the boot camp stuff that we do all the time. I'm going to circle it in red. Boot camp, as opposed to the to-do section above. Boot camp. So let's look at some daily things that we should be doing. Recite what you learned that day. Either talk to yourself while you're on the bus or in a car ride or something. Recite what you've learned. Think, oh, I learned about sine or y equals. Just that later refreshing, just a little bit, helps on the days that you don't do homework. Every day do 5 minutes of math on paper. If you don't get any homework done that day, write down what you can remember on the scrap of a newspaper, x plus y equals 5, and work on it. Tell someone what you've learned. So much can be learned by explaining to someone because they understand your confidence level and you do too. And by explaining it, you understand how confident you are on the topic by their emotion, your emotion to how they react and everything. Apply what you learn to daily life. Try and bring the easiest math into daily life, like revenue at a company is profit, or profit is revenue minus costs, etc. Study with classmates. Go to the library. Get new friends. Find a classmate in class. Say, hi, I'm whoever. I'm not going to text you. Let's meet at the library after school or something, or at lunch hour. Study with them. Explain to them what you know. Have them explain to what they know. Both parties will learn. If you're smarter, you get to explain what you know and have a better idea of what you know. And you get a way better idea of what you know trying to explain it to someone who doesn't know, because it really fills in the gaps. And the people who are less smart or don't know as much about the subject because they're better at other subjects or whichever, get to learn from the other person who gives them that information. So again, think about and recite what you learn. what you did in each of those things. How did it go? I talked to so-and-so about this. They told me about this. I brought this into my daily life. Tell your parents, tell your brother or sister. Okay, off to the right, page layout. Always little titles. Notice at the top, always C12 or PC12. Pre-calculus, calculus, math, whatever. Oh my gosh. Title. Always in the top right-hand corner, just put your initials and the date. And let's say it's 4/21. Then, at least, if I lose my binder or something, somebody can at least find the initials who's taking this course at the binder at the school or whichever. So making sure we have really clean notes. We want to be able to look back at our notes and study our notes rather than randomly do questions over and over again in the future, especially for practice for university, because we have more midterms and final exams. We have accumulations of stuff. We have to take better notes so we don't end up carrying around our whole binder. We just take notes on our notes for individual review sheets for certain few concepts or whichever, and take those very neatly so then in the future when you want to look back on them and you can read them, you want to remember all the topics you were talking about. Write little English sentences to really help the reinforcement of the remembering. If you have a really hard new question, do one question per page. Just do one question, then take that piece of paper to the teacher and ask them about office hours. Help me with this question. What's it similar to? Do a similar question on the back. But if you're really stuck on a question, don't just start a new question. Leave a bunch of space. If you're only 2/3 down the page and you think you should start a new question, don't. Start a new page. Go to the back. Start a new page. You always want to leave a bunch of space all over in the margin and below just in case you want to go back and work on some of the questions or write English sentences to yourself. Keep in mind, new stuff should go at the back. I know people like to put new stuff at the front, and I have a full binder organization for that. But if you're going to be taking stuff out of your binder, you want to quickly put it into an at-home binder, you want it to be chronological with the newest stuff at the back, keeping it by date, and then if you take it out of your current binder and put it into the at-home after you've taken notes on notes and a review sheet for the notes you're taking out, you just want to put it at the back of the stack, and then it's all in order. You want to study your stuff in order. If you're flipping to the left, it's like reading a book. But if you're flipping to the left and then back to the right if you have multiple pages, and then back to the left to get to the newer stuff at the front, it just doesn't make any sense. Organization. Have a nightly binder. Take out stuff daily. Have a at-school binder, one binder, not two. One binder with 8 dividers, and make sure you're taking stuff out daily and always adding to your review sheets for each chapter. So then even if you take some notes out, you always know that you have the main concepts in that location. Make sure you use multiple dividers and have an identical binder at home with the same 8 or 16 dividers, whereby you take stuff out and you put stuff in. Sometimes at home you'll study that at home binder. You'll need it for later chapters. Always have a syllabus. Make sure that you ask the teacher for the syllabus or print the syllabus offline, and always have all your dates in your calendar all ready to go. Duotangs or formula sheets, always have them out with you. Highlight them. Make sure you're familiar with different pages and where stuff is. Put little yellow sticky notes there. Again, new material at the back. I said that off to the left at page layout, but organization, new material at the back. It makes more sense. When you're flipping your stuff through your binder, make sure you do two-handed flipping and gently run all the pieces of paper past the 3 metal coils. Because lots of the times if you do it one-handed too quickly or close the binder all at once, it starts to mess with the metal coils and the paper starts to pull the coils apart, causing for those little indents, further wrecking the 3 hole punches and further causing damage to the binder. Two-hand flipping. And again, the at-home binder. Make sure you nightly take stuff out of the current binder and put it into the at-home binder. Okay, formulas. I always keep the equal sign in the same spot, working down the page as much as possible. It really helps with my algebra, moving things from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. Makes it a lot easier for me to give it to somebody else and then for them to read. And always go down the page. Rarely go to the right. 99% of the time, go down the page. If you have an expression and you want to save some space on the page, fine, go to the right and answer the question and circle your answer. But always go down the page for previous steps. No half fractions. Use graph paper. Always use fractions on the lines. We're going to get to more complex fractions, and we want to be able to have a clear, complex fraction, one fraction on top of another, with a top of a top and a bottom of a bottom and a top of a bottom and a bottom of a top, whichever. Always write down the formulas. Always substitute into formulas. So much easier when you're in a test to read over your test, to look over it, or if you're at the library and your friend's taking a look at it, making sure that they can easily see that you substituted directly below. Very easy to find. Very easy to follow, excuse me. Always have two equations side by side. By the way, if you can't read this, print it off and just look at what I'm circling and read off the notes and listen. So, equations side by side. If you ever have two equations, we always want to work on those equations side by side. Anytime you're going to do two equal signs on the same line, side by side. Then we can work on both those equations side by side, usually substituting one equation into the other, and then solving for an answer, and then substituting that answer into the other equation, which is beside it, and they're both side by side, and it's very easy to follow. Going right and left is not the best idea. You'll notice most textbooks these days are keeping the equal sign in the same spot, working down the page. All right, next off to the left, general. So go slower. Take your time. Think, when did I learn this first? Grade 8, we're working with fractions, but I'm in trigonometry. Okay, what do I know about fractions before I even start thinking about the trigonometry? I know how to add fractions and subtract fractions and multiply fractions. Okay, now back to the trigonometry. Okay, so now I'm doing the same operations that I did grade 8 with respect to fractions, but now I'm just applying it to trigonometry. Sum up the information. If you're given information in an English sentence, or even just as a question, write it down. Write down any given information with the units. Always draw a diagram. Label the diagram. If you have a difficult time coming up with the answer to the question, try and make up a similar example. Try and break down that harder problem into tiny more steps and come up with a similar example with respect to each of those steps, and then try and put it together. Show more work. So easy to learn a quick step from the teacher or think that you're going to remember in the future how you thought through those processes in your head, but better off writing as many steps as you possibly can. Therefore, when you're looking back in the future, you can read over your steps. Especially when we get to university and we want to do more harder and more difficult classes, and having midterms and finals, especially if it's a year final, we want to have really good note-taking systems. And making sure, showing more steps, if we see material 8 months later trying to review it for a final, we want to make sure that it's really easy. And having to think through the steps that we skipped takes time on the brain, and it's much easier if we just see the step that we did. Okay, English sentences. Anytime you're learning something, try and write it down as an English sentence as easy as possible. Multiply tops, multiply bottoms. Multiplying fractions, whichever. Those tiny little English sentences make it a lot easier to recall the methods that you did in the future when reviewing your stuff. Again, this is grade 12. They used to have a pre-calc 12 final. Some schools still do. They don't anymore. But I'm trying to prepare you for university. Final exams, getting prepared, doing clean notes, reviewing your notes, rather than just randomly redoing questions over and over again, wasting so much time. You're going to get leapfrogged by the people who have these systems in place at this point in time, or at least practicing them, because you're going to try a certain method of studying that you like, and then you're going to change it. And then you're going to try something else and maybe revert back to the old one. Okay, more English sentences. Just write down more. Write down more. Do a graph. Oh, wow, just do a table of values for fun. Do a methods sheet. Make sure you're writing down all of the different types of things that your teacher is telling you to do all in one location. I call it a one-chapter review sheet with all the English sentences and the formulas that you're going to do. Do a formula sheet. Put all the formulas on the methods sheet, or do a new sheet. Do a remember sheet. All the little things that you have to remember. Square root both sides. Don't forget about plus minus. Put that on the sheet if you forget it a lot. Keep the review sheet out a lot. Highlight the part like plus minus if you forget it a lot until it's ingrained and you don't have to look at the review sheet so much. Circle and always check your answer. It's going to be a lot easier to study your stuff or have a friend look over your stuff, or a teacher, or look back at the future from the future, and have answers circled so you know, you can see the question is defined by the last time you saw a circle above it, for example, and then you know the answer is the circled part, and that's what you're going to. Arbitrary numbers. So when I said come up with a similar example earlier, so many times it helps just to come up with simple numbers and see what's happening here. Like, what if we just put in some numbers? What's happening? Sine 1 equals cos 5 plus 2. Cos x, I'm getting too far. Pick some basic numbers, see if it works. Mike is 2 years older than Nick. Mike is 15. How old is Nick? Well, logically just go, well, Mike must be so-and-so and Nick must be so-and-so. Now create an equation that will make that work. Substitute into that equation. Make sure it still works. Then circle your equation and claim that you just came up with the equation on your own. Arbitrary numbers. Point at where you look. When you're learning from someone or you're reading a textbook, point at where you're looking. Drag your finger along the text that you're reading. Point to the formula with one hand while you write it down with the other. When a teacher's teaching you from their notes, point to where you're looking so they know that you're focused on where they're talking about. Point to where you look. Work off to the side. When you're doing grade 8, 9, or 10, and 11 things, don't do it where you're doing it. Do it off to the right, work on the grade 11 method, and bring it back into the question so the question doesn't take you 10 lines. It'll save space on the paper and allow you to have a system of questions on the margin and off to the right, things that you need to either work on or have really quick, and be able to know that those are the individual methods that we need to apply. Okay, off to the right, homework. So make notes on notes. At home, pretty much every day that I took notes in math class, I took 2 or 3 pages, and I couldn't stand my binder getting that big. So I would simplify everything that the teacher taught me, and half the time, or sometimes it would just take me like half of a page. So then I would just keep that half of my page in my school binder. I would take the 3 pages of notes I took in class and put them into a home binder. Sometimes I would perform this less often, like weekly or monthly. But make notes on notes. Simplify your notes. Just the experience of cleaning up your notes and rewriting them and writing them in a cleaner form and going over them in your head is an example of studying, and it helps you understand and learn the material. Make review sheets. Each chapter, make a review sheet. Make a review sheet for the whole year. Put all the things that you're supposed to remember from each chapter on each sheet. Put all the things that you're supposed to remember for the whole year that you have to remember back and forth between different chapters. Make review sheets. Binder open to notes. When you're doing your homework, make sure that you have your binder open up to the notes section or the notes a couple pages before, and have your homework as a single page of graph paper in front of you. Title it the same title as your notes. Date it and initial it the same date so it's easy to keep together. And then start working on the homework either in the textbook. And look at the notes and see how you can use the teacher notes that you learned that day to more easily recognize similar questions in the textbook and the solutions. Keep your binder open to notes. Do homework. Do homework all the time. Redo homework. Go ask another teacher for homework. Find another teacher's website and get the homework. Go to a local bookstore and buy an extra book from a teacher recommendation and buy another book and do some more homework. Find some free online videos. Watch the videos. Do the questions. Try and redo the questions without the video. Do homework. Do the parts you can and leave space, enough space, that when you go to office hours or a teacher or a tutor or a friend, that you can actually answer it within that space and have enough space that you can write a few English sentences for the things you didn't understand. Do the parts you can and leave space. Redo your homework, I mentioned before. Extra questions. Make up questions yourself. Create questions. Lots of the times you find out what doesn't work just by simply to try and find out what does. Make a table of contents. Write down all of the different topics, not what the textbook titled them, but what you think the name of that topic should be. Graphing, trigonometry, algebra, fractions, etc. Make a checklist. Each type of question, write down a little tiny English sentence as to what type of question that is. Put a check mark beside it. Maybe leave the box open and maybe put a number in there, 1 to 10, how well you understand it in pencil. Erase it and make the number better once you feel better about that point in the checklist. Below, troubleshooting. Troubleshooting, I mean, there's a million. Make sure you copy down the question correctly. With your left hand point to the question, either in the textbook or in the workbook or on the computer or whichever, and with your right hand point to the question that you wrote on your homework page, your single piece of graph paper that you have in front of you. And very carefully move your left finger slowly along and make sure that your right finger moves at the same time and each and every aspect of the question has been written down correctly. Check with your calculator, check each operation, check with a friend, ask a teacher, etc. Okay, tests off to the right. Ask the teacher when the test is. Ask the teacher what the format of the test is. Ask the teacher which formats you're going to get. What is the outline of the test? Is it multiple choice? Is it long answer? Are there any English sentences that we have to write? Is it matching? What's the test out of? Are we allowed a calculator? Are we going to get any graph paper as a spare paper? Now, study with classmates before tests. Tell them what you know. Tell them what you don't know. Ask them what they know. Ask them what they don't know. Go over questions together. Hide questions. Do questions from past exams. Make cheat sheets. Definitely. Just the making of the cheat sheets, the review sheets at the chapters I've been talking about, just allow you to be rewriting the formulas and have that single page out all the time, looking to it, getting a better visual memory of which are all the different formulas are. Then, when you're actually sitting in the test and you're stuck and your forehead is filled up with blood, you're like you're being chased by a tiger, ask yourself, what else could I do? Where have I seen this before? What analogy could I make? Maybe I'm adding and subtracting trigonometric equations, but I go, okay, I'm adding and subtracting, or fractions. I'm working with fractions. Okay, I've done this before. What can I do with fractions? I've added and subtracted, multiplied, divide, and started different other types. Okay, cool. What else could I do? Be calm, really try and breathe, like really honestly sit there and go, okay, put your pencil down, put your hands together, and take 3 deep breaths. I'll just do 2, but take 3. So, sometimes ask yourself, what's next? Like, what could I do after? What if I have a gap, but I know what to do next? Well, start from what you know what you can do next. Then write down the questions after. Write down the questions off to the right. Well, I would have done this, but I know that this kind of looks like this, so I started maybe there. Maybe there's a connection somehow. Then at least when you go to the teacher, you see if that connection's valid, rather than just a lost thought, thinking, oh, why would I bother to write it down? All right, off to the right, inventory. So we're going to have a pencil case. We're going to have a calendar, binder reminder, or whichever. Pencil, black pen, and a red pen, or a blue pen and a red pen. Pens are nicer to write English sentences sometimes. Definitely have a pencil to do most of your math. But then the red pen to circle stuff because it'll stand out easier. Definitely a white eraser, a solid white eraser that erases nicely with your click pencil or whichever. Possibly an pencil sharpener. Definitely all the calculators. Both forms. Practice with both. I messed up so many times in university because I wasn't prepared. Because in grade 12 I was like, oh, graph and calculator is everything. And then in calculus, in university, they took away your calculator. And then they said no calculators, and all of a sudden you just, so have a calculator, have both calculators, have them both out, figure out how to do it with both calculators, see the idiosyncrasies of how brackets and everything works with each one. Also, make sure that you can always do questions by hand, or at least know that you're getting to the final step before you ever pick up that calculator. And ideally, don't pick it up like a phone. Leave it on the table. If you're right-handed, point to what you're typing into your calculator with your pen. With your left hand, look at your calculator and type those buttons in. Then move your right hand along a little bit with your pen and point to the next thing and continue typing with your left hand. You're going to make way less errors than picking up your phone and your eyes zoom in to 1 foot away, and then they have to refocus and move away to look at what you were writing and try and find it on the page, and then look back at the phone, and again it adjusts focus, and it's a break. I really suggest leaving the calculator on the table, and if you're right-handed, use your left hand, and if you're left-handed, use your right hand, and rarely ever pick up the calculator. So always have graph paper. Why bother use line paper? I mean, sometimes the vertical lines get in the way, but I just mean, why not use line paper? Graph paper all the time. I don't like those coiled books. I'm going to talk about my seminar later. Whatever, Google Seminar 125, and it's all of this all in book form. Well, excuse me. No, it's in it's in YouTube form, so I read it to YouTube, long story with an iPhone. But I will also have a printed copy of it, so you can tap on the link for the YouTube, or you can tap on the link to print the whole book and read it if you like. But off to graph paper. Always just use graph paper. The thick stuff lasts longer, a little bit thicker, whatever. Always a ruler and a protractor, a clear ruler, so you can see the points underneath sometimes. Definitely a USB. I know we're Google driving everything, but it's always nice to have a solid backup. And maybe back it up once a month. Yellow stickies, as I mentioned, nice, the small ones, put them everywhere. Definitely a highlighter along with the red pen. Sometimes it's easier to highlight stuff and it's more clean than messing it up with more red pen. Definitely a black marker. Even a red marker. Sometimes just writing with a big, thick marker works really well. And whiteout. And definitely the tape whiteout. It works out a lot better. It takes a little bit of learning on how to use it, but works out a lot better. Okay, a couple of use pencil. Use pencil all the time. All the time. Sometimes use pen or highlighters off to the right for English sentences or whatever, but just use pencil. It's so much easier to erase. Get a nice dark pencil. Go buy a nice Faber-Castell from downtown. And always use graph paper. Practice with your calculator. See how the different ways that you can use brackets uses different things and understand how it works. Most of the times it makes sense with BEDMAS, but a lot of the times it doesn't. So try with a different calculator. Make sure you understand both. Having two and understanding both and getting the same answer is very helpful, because if you do the same operation with both and you get the same answer, you know it did the same thing. But if you did a similar thing, but one did one thing and one did the other, then you can narrow down where the problem is. Always check your equipment. Well before a test, make sure that you have enough battery in all of your calculators, that you have enough lead in all of your extra leads or your pencils or whichever, that your erasers are big enough, that your inventory, I'd print off the inventory list and always make sure you have those things. And do it off to the right. Oh, it says do it of to the right, but do it off to the right, I think I mentioned off before. Do stuff off to the right, bring it back in. Okay, word problems, off to the right. Word problems always, as from grade 8. Let statements, every time. Equations, every time. Substitution, every time. Let statements, let A equal Mike's age, or M equal Mike's age. Let N equal Nick's age. Then your equations. Mike is 2 years older than Nick. M plus N is equal to 2, or M minus N equals 2, or M plus 2 equals, whichever version of that equation you want, side by side. And then some other equation, possibly side by side that. Work on one, substitute into the other. Two equations side by side. A lot of the stuff overlaps. Any ways we can get extra marks off to the right, the circle in red. Find out if there's retests allowed. See if there's any corrections or any value to those. Sometimes the more you just show effort and show that you've just done the retests or done the corrections on your test or your homework and shown them to the teacher, they'll start to give you more half marks or be nicer in their office hours. When you go, they'll be more nice. They'll be like, I want to go to a friend's house. My office hours are not allowing me to do that. The more I just give the kid the answer because I want to show them a reward for coming, then all of a sudden you've cut down your studying time. The teacher's showing you which questions are more valuable. Bonus. Ask them if there's anything you can do for bonus. Whatever it is. Make a review sheet. Make a project. See if there's any bonus marks. Any re-handing in assignments or redoing tests. Any makeup, etc. A little bit about a calendar, either with a binder reminder or a phone app. But what I highly recommend is, because the phone is distracting and a lot of the times you're not allowed it in the library or in a test or in class, I'd recommend a paper calendar. Now, don't write everything in both. People get too into both calendars. Write some type of stuff, maybe on the paper calendar that you keep at the front of your binder, like tests. And in the reminder app on your phone, you write down stuff like do math homework, like study with friend then, like read chapter whichever. Down below, again, office hours. Go get teacher help. One, you get to see other people there with similar questions and you can listen over. And the teacher is going to give you a lot of extra help, showing you a reward for coming. Remember to do the parts of the questions that you can to get the most efficient help from them, making sure that you have all the questions all previously done as much as you can, and then they can get right to the point. They're going to respect that a lot, so they don't have to go through all the regular easy steps that you probably already know. Anytime you can get on the teacher's good side. Don't be too much of a nerd, but just the right amount that they're interested in you and that you can get as many marks as possible. Off to the right, life. Have a backpack with water in it. Put the water out. Take sips of water occasionally. Make sure you're getting enough exercise. Seriously. Sweat occasionally. Come on. And a lot of rest. Make sure that you're resting enough. Getting a good night's sleep sometimes is way better than just staying up and studying. Get motivated or find someone who motivates you. I like Elon Musk. When he landed those 2 rocket boosters side by side, it really opened up my eyes. When he said just the other day, buying a gasoline car or unautonomous car in 2019 is like buying a horse in 1919 when Ford was working on the Model T, because Teslas and autonomous cars now are going to be able to be programmed so you can rent them out as a taxi. So it's not going to be a depreciating asset, but possibly an appreciating asset. Using solar panels to charge the car that you rent out to taxi services that you earn money off of your Tesla. Again, get motivated. Find someone who motivates you. Honda. The war happens and Honda basically was ruined. I think World War II. And Toyota kept running. And Honda was like, I need to get to work. I'm going to put a small little engine on my bicycle. And it'll be cheap gas. And then all of a sudden, all these other people decided, wow, what's that little engine on your bicycle? Can I have one? And then he all of a sudden started Honda motorcycles. And then Honda cars prevailed. Just a couple of stories. Elon Musk, Honda. They really motivate me. Find someone who motivates you and think about what they did. Watch their YouTube videos. Find out what they did. Think about the things they did. Listen to the things that they say. Try and implement the things that they've done. See how they work. Try other things. Get motivated. Stay on top of things. Stay on top of things. Don't get behind. It's so easy to get behind. It's so easy to stay ahead of time. It's like exercise. So easy to stay fit rather than getting unfit and taking a longer time to get exercise. Before school starts, get all the textbooks. Ask all the teachers if they can give you the textbook ahead of time. Make a table of contents. Ask if you can print off the teacher's notes ahead of time. Print them off. Read them. Stay on top of things. Set up your calendar first of all. Make sure that you can get all the extracurricular things that you need to do in arrangement with all your tests and social life. Find something to do. If you're stuck and you have some homework and there's nothing to do and you're going to watch TV or do math, do math. Make up a question. Call up a friend and see if they want to go to the library and do a little bit of math together. I know it sounds so nerdy, but in the university, Sauder School of Business, they put us into groups right away. There were the social loafers, the lazy people in the group, the middle of the class who didn't really know what to do, and usually a leader. I usually fell right in the middle, and I didn't know too much about the topics, but I liked to work hard and contribute to the leader. Not that it's a really hierarchy. The middle of the road people have just as much value as the leader or the little bit slower person. Give the slower person the mundane task. They may not seem it that way. That may be interesting to them. Middle of the road people, get the tasks done for the leader who can maybe think through the problems better. Get to the library soon. Start studying with friends at university. You're in these groups and you want to have these skills of group working. I know it seems like a lot of work in the beginning, getting over the hurdles of practice studying with friends and not using phones and leaving them in your bag and at the library actually studying. You need to get in the practice of studying with friends, because at university, lots of the times it'll be like, oh, I studied these questions really in deep. Oh, here's a photocopy of them. Oh, you did the other questions? Perfect. Let's trade, or maybe plan that ahead of time. So much about studying with friends, especially the workplace these days. It's not the same as it used to be, where one person could just do a bunch of tasks and create something. It now involves so many different people and so many different communication methods and working together. So start working together with other students as soon as possible. Where are we? Setting goals and get a mentor. Well, I talked about getting motivated, but setting goals. Next year, I want to have an organized binder. Tomorrow, I want to have my review sheet finished for math. I want to make sure every Sunday I organize my binder, etc. Set goals. Have idols. Get a mentor. Idols, mentors. Mentors and idols, I mean, very similar. I just like both names, so I wrote them both down. Make plans. Really work out your calendar. Possibly print off a weekly calendar and write the regular things that you usually do. Lots of the times it's easier to see it as a big picture. I actually have a yearly calendar on paper. I'll show you how that Excel works at some point. Follow through. Really try and tell yourself, I'm going to do something. I'm going to organize my binder every Sunday night. Write it down that you're going to do it on your to-do list and put a star beside it and write it on your wall. And then try and do it and make sure that you do it. And then practice doing it over and over again and see how that works and see if organizing your binder works. If it doesn't and it hinders your marks and you'd rather just either redo questions over and over again rather than studying your notes, or talk with friends about the questions or whichever, do that. And then on Sundays do something different. But follow through with something for a long enough time that you can actually see the results. Not just deciding that one time because you didn't sleep well, but you ate good dinner, well for dinner, whichever, and you did poorly, but then you switched it up and didn't eat and slept well, and then you did better, that for some reason you associate with eating better and sleeping, whichever. I don't even know if I said that analogy correctly. You understand. And have confidence. Really have confidence in the questions. Really try and zone out the outer side world when the class is going on, and before the teacher goes to the next step, think, what's the next step? And have confidence with it. Say it in your head. I think she's going to write down, I think he or she is going to write down this. Then they do or they don't. Then you get an idea of how you feel about things ahead of time. Really have confidence with that. Really think through it and think, yes, I know that or I don't. And if you get it wrong, then maybe write that off to the right, what you thought, and then maybe think at home after why you thought that. Just writing a lot more down. So again, this is the nerd sheet. Again, before we went over the formula sheet. Hopefully you print this one off double-sided and keep it in a clear sheet that you can find all the time.